All right. Well, in my course sequencing, I did not mention strongly enough that if you're not in 151, you really should be. The reason why is because CMP 151 helps expose you to networking. And in the spring, CMP 250 is the networking course. And so it's really designed so that in the fall, you take 151, get some exposure to networking, and then in the spring, you take 250, the actual networking class. And then in the fall, the next fall, you take ethical hacking. And, and so that way they're building on each other. For instance, ethical hacking is going on right now, but I would not recommend you get in it without networking because it builds on all that information. It's not impossible to do, but boy, is it going to be stressful. It's not just sink or swim. It's you tied a rock around your neck and now you gotta make it. I had one student, I've had a few students do this where they just take them out of order. Like, oh, can I take the networking class? Well, you didn't take 151, but I mean, you can do it. It's going to be harder. And then they take networking, and then the next next go around, right? They take 151. They're like, yeah, this would have helped. All right, so lots of people are like, oh, my schedule's already set, and I'm so stressed. I'm going to screw stuff up, so I'll just not do that. I'll take 151 later. Come see me. Let's take a look at your schedule. Let's get you into 151 if we can, so that you don't have to worry about it. And in this semester, it's easier to do that, right? Because we're going to be kind of doing the same thing. 151, we have a lot of labs, but I'm working with students on how to figure out how to do those labs, even if they have to do them remotely and not in class. That is harder because, I'm not right there helping you, but it's, COVID has made things weird. So try to get in 151. That's what I'm saying to you. All right, so let's move on. Sorry, just got to get my screen share running. And you end up having to move everything around because the control panel's in the way. Okay, I've been uploading my stuff. That's what this is. This is the videos that you're looking at. But let's go over to our CMP-100. All right, so that's the course sequence, and that is actually your first assignment that you have to do. Well, I guess notes is your first assignment, but you'll turn that in. So now we're going to move on to the differences between high school and college. And I added this a couple of years ago because we've just started, over the last 6 years, had a lot less success with students. And you don't want that for your students. You want them to be successful. And so we've kind of looked at, well, what's going on here? And then this was added because of that. So there's some things that have changed down at the K-12 level, that's what they call that, down in high school level, that have made it harder for students these days. The whole no student left behind, no man left behind. They began to focus, nationally. Let's start having all these standardized tests. Well, when I went to school, you took standardized tests, but they weren't tied to the school's money. And so you would take a standardized test to see how you were personally nationwide, but also how the school was doing, so the school could make adjustments. Well, now they tie that to the money. And then, of course, that pressure then comes down onto the teacher of, they better be able to pass this test because that's money to the school. That's your job. That really changed how teachers had to adjust. How do we make a student successful at taking those tests? Well, we give them study guides. That's what we do. We make sure they have the information, we cram it in their head, we force them to do it, and then they go take the test. Now, for a lot of students, that's okay. But for quite a lot of other ones, probably a larger portion, they actually do worse in that scenario because what's happening is you just get a study guide. You don't have to open up the book and figure out what's important out of that book. Find the answers out of the book. Somebody just hands you a study guide, and then you study those questions, and then you go take the test. And then for a lot of students, they just brain dump. That's what we call it. In other words, they tell their brain, I'm only going to need this temporarily. So I'm going to look through the study guide, and then I'll do well on the test. And then after that, you can flush it all. I don't need it. And that's true. We do those kinds of things. If you're in a class that you really don't care about, but you know that you got to get a good grade in it, that's what you're going to do. You're going to say, well, I really don't need this geology class. I don't ever see myself using that again in the future. So it's time to study for the first test. Okay, done, flush it. You don't actually try to retain it. And that's because we have this misconception of what our brain does and how it works. Our brain can absorb information and make new links and continue to gather information and make new links. And we don't look at it that way. We look at it like, well, I only got so much storage in there, just like my computer, and I don't want to keep that. I'm going to flush it, kick that stuff out, because then I can make room for other. That's not the way our brains work. And a lot of times we're actually taught that, we actually think, oh, that person's really smart over there. The reason they are is because they got more brain power. They can put more in their head than I can. Your brain is no different than theirs. It's this just that they follow a different process to get it done. And that's the truth. And so in high school, what's happening, and I don't blame the teachers at all, is that they're teaching to the test and then students are brain dumping. And so when they come into a college class, they expect at some point that somebody's going to come and go, here's your study guide. There's no study guides, guys. Yeah, you will actually hit classes that'll have study guides, but very, very few. And I'm only saying that because I had a few classes that had study guides, and that was a long time ago. So you'll hit some that'll be like, okay, well, we're going to have biology tests, so here's the study guide. Most of them are going to say, study the chapter, especially the questions at the back. Get ready. And that's important. You may think, oh, Jesus is so stupid. No, that's important because when you go get a job someday, they're going to say, I need you to solve this problem. And you shouldn't say, well, where's the study guide for it? How do I know how to solve it? We hired you to figure that out. So if you can't, we'll get somebody else. Right. And so what we're asking students now is to make a bigger leap. They're coming from a place where your courses were defined, your educational processes were defined, you were given study guides for everything. I know students that came from places that, because not all schools are this way, but they'd have a teacher and they're just kind of failing the class. And then the teacher would say, well, do these 3 things, turn in these 3 things and do this extra thing and you'll pass. And college doesn't work that way. I've had lots of students come to me and say, oh, I've got an F in your class. Is there any way that I can pass this class? I'm like, there are 52 assignments. Get them done. That's how you pass this class. And they're like, what? Because they think there's an easy button. They think that, no, you're supposed to tell me what my high school teacher told me. And that was do these 5 things and do this extra paper, and then I'll get a C. No, that's not going to happen. There's a set workload, and it's not fair to other students if you're not complying with that. Now, again, I'm not saying every high school does that, because they don't. Not every teacher does that. But I have had students that they've come from that background of, dang, I just blow it off until the end, and then you make me do like 5 assignments, and all these other schmucks had to actually work, but I didn't have to. Sorry, this is different. So let's take a look at this information. That's kind of my heading for this. That's my summary of all this. So let's take a look at typically what high schools are like. So typical high school, there's lecture, they give you worksheets, concise study guides, and you take tests, and that's what it is. College, you also have lecture, lots more writing assignments, right? I want to know what you think about that. And I'm trying to, again, prepare you for when you go out and work, because you're going to sit in a meeting and somebody was going to say, hey, did you take a look at that website? Did you take a look at what they're doing over at that other place? What do you think about that? And basically what they're saying is, did you read that information that I asked you to read and digest it, create an opinion of what's happening so you can now tell me? And the college level, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do that through writing assignments. And then, of course, if you get a study guide, there'll be a massive study guide. So in other words, what the instructor is going to do to you, is they're going to go, oh, yeah, I'll give you a study guide. Here's the whole freaking textbook. I'm not going to tell you what's on the test. Right. So lots of times in college, you don't even want a class that gives you study guides because they're massive. Right. I actually, in my CMP 250 class, I don't know if I'm going to do an ethical hacking, but in my CMP 250 class and my CMP 151, it's like, hey, there's going to be a final. Here's this massive study guide. And so the study guide is usually at least twice the number of questions. So if there's 60 questions on the actual test, you're going to have 120 that you get to study. Because me as an instructor, I'm trying to push you to learn all that. I want you to remember the 120, not just the 60. So large study guides. And then, of course, there's tests as well. And those tests are usually larger and lots of times a lot fewer. So you'll have these big tests instead of a lot of little tests. So here's a breakdown of the differences. We're going to go through this. Following the rules in high school, choosing responsibility in college. All right. So in high school, it is mandatory and it's usually free, right? Government totally pays for that. College is voluntary and it's expensive, right? EAC tries to keep the cost down. Like, you cannot imagine how they really take that seriously. And it's still more than it should be. And, you know, not to get on a soapbox, but that's because the feds have continually pulled out money from education. They're making it so that only the rich can get education. So get it while you can, right? Because your kids probably won't be able to afford it at all. The feds used to provide a lot of money to you to get that education, believing in an educated America. And now they're making it much more harder. And they've pulled out money from states. They pulled out money from community colleges. And so how do we cover those costs? Those costs get sent on to you, and it becomes more expensive. Your time is structured by others in high school, right? Your teachers figure all that out, right? In a lot of classes, it's like, okay, well, we went over stuff yesterday, so today's study time. In college, you have to manage your own time. And in this one, this is a lot of where people fail. They cannot manage their own time. And so I'm giving them, like, 151 has a lot of stuff to do. And a lot of it is just tediously going through the textbook and finding the answers. You know, so it's not, I'm telling you, it's not hard. It just takes time, and they don't manage their time. And then halfway through the course, they're failing because they haven't completed any of that work. You have to realize that for every hour you spend in a class, you should be spending an hour outside of class. And if you follow that rule, you'll do well. Now, of course, that's not always the case. You know, you're going to take classes that require nothing outside of class, and you're going to take classes that require 3 hours every day outside of class. But for the most part, if you're saying, I have my 100 class and I meet 3 times a week, or we're supposed to, and those are 3 50-minute periods, then I need to do basically 3 50-minute periods outside of that to get my work done. And if you know, we have the technology, we have computers. If you actually use a computer and say, well, okay, this is my classes and this is what I'm studying, then by managing your time, everything will be so much less stressful. You won't get overloaded like so many do. Somewhere around October, people just get so overloaded, they stop going to class, and it's because, well, you didn't manage your time. Simply, that's it. You see these people and you're like, oh, they're so smart and they can do anything. Most of the time, they just can manage their time and they actually study. And a lot of kids these days, I hate to say it, have been raised in this culture where you see these geniuses, right? You see this basketball player that can do whatever. You see the singer that can do whatever. And all the hard work is masked. You don't see any of that. And you don't realize that, oh, well, that person that just got that talent didn't. They worked for hours and hours and hours training their voices, right? Same thing with football or whatever. And it's the same thing in school. Oh, that kid's so smart. They just said, yeah, they're usually just studying their butt off. That's usually what they're doing. Manage your own time. You can count on parents and teachers to remind you of your responsibilities and guide you in setting priorities. You must balance your responsibilities and set priorities, right? Well, nobody's doing it for you. You're going to have to figure that out yourself. Each day you proceed from one class directly to the next, and you spend all that time in class. But at college, you often have several hours between classes, or you don't have any classes that day, right? Those are the good intentions. Man, I don't have hardly nothing on Tuesday. That's when I'm going to study, and then you just screw around and you play Destiny 2 instead of doing some homework, right? I'm always that kind of person that says, you know what? You got a favorite game? Play it, but use it as a reward, right? Whatever you love to do, that's your reward. So I've got to sit down and work for 2 hours, and then I'm going to go and do that. Most of your classes are arranged for you. You have to arrange your own schedule. You have to consult an advisor. You have to figure that out. That was the whole point of actually having that course sequence to help you figure that out, because it is a bear to figure out. And again, I'm here, Lydia Matas here, Scott Russell's here. We're all here to help you out with that. You are responsible for knowing what it takes to graduate. You have to keep track of that paper. You have to know, what am I taking next semester and what's after. And it's not like you don't have any help with that. So in high school, they just push you through it, but in college, you got to figure that out, right? So you have to track that. All right, so guiding principle of all that stuff that we just looked at. You will usually be told what to do and corrected if your behavior is out of line. But in college, the guiding principle is you are expected to take responsibility for what you do and you don't, as well as the consequences for your decisions. You have to do that in college. All right, now going to high school classes or succeeding college classes. School year is 36 weeks. In high school, some classes extend over both semesters, some don't. The academic year is divided into two separate 15-week semesters, plus a week after each semester for exams. So think about the difference in that amount of time. That honestly is actually the thing that students like the most coming from high school to college. It's like, whoa, I can get all my English stuff done in one semester. It's like, yeah, it does not take 36 weeks for anybody. But in high school, because it's paid for and everybody has to go, you do have that lowest denominator. So you have to make those classes so everybody can pass them. And so that means the majority, which is in the middle, are basically kind of wasting their time in that. And the ones at the high end are really wasting their time. In the academic year, here's your English 101 one semester, here's your English 102, and now you don't have to take any more Englishes after that. 1 year, you're done. That's because we're building on what high schools have done already, right? You have a ton of information in your head. Now we're just going to add some more to it, and we're finished. We don't have to take a whole year to do it. You may study outside of class as little as 0 to 2 hours. That was my kids. You know, I have one kid that actually studied a lot. All the rest are like, oh, I have to study. I should just know this. You need to study at least 2 to 3 hours outside of each class, right? As I already mentioned. You seldom need to read anything more than once, and sometimes listening in class is enough. College, you need to review class notes and text materials regularly. You need to actually go through the information. And again, specifically to technology, this is vital because there's always new stuff. There's always new things to read and to do. And getting in the habit now will make you super successful in the future. And you know, in the future, you're just going to be reading it online, right? You're going to hit this website. You're going to go to that blog. You're going to go to this material, that material. And so get in the habit now. You have to switch from this, I don't know, I just go to class and I don't have to worry about it. That happens in most high school classes, to being in college and saying, I need to read the stuff that McBride is asking me to read. You know, I get into 151 and we're going to cover, 17 chapters in that course, and each chapter is at least 20 pages long. I need to actually look at that and highlight things in it so I'll know this information, right? So in high school, you are expected to read short assignments that were then discussed and often retaught. In college, you are assigned substantial amounts of reading and writing, which may not be directly addressed in class. Now, in my class, I don't really do that. Here's my writings. This is what we're doing in class. Because that's a pet peeve of mine. Like I said, 2 master's degree. I've taken a lot of classes. Yeah, you nip this class and it's got like 4 books in it, and then nothing ever comes from 3 of them. You know, you're jumping around and you don't know what they're jumping to or what class you're going to. It's just, I don't prefer that. But the truth is that in college, you're going to run into that. So again, the guiding principle, you will usually be told in class what you need to learn and from assigned readings. And then in college, it's up to you to read and understand the assigned material. Lectures and assignments proceed from the assumption that you've already done that. And that is true. I cannot tell you how much I'll go through information in 151 and 250, 250's networking, and nobody has read anything, right? It's like, oh, okay, I'll listen to McBride and then I'll go read. That's not the way to do it. The way to do it is go, okay, well, it's the first week of school. We're probably going to cover chapter 1. Let me get into chapter 1 and get reading about it. That way, when McBride starts talking about this stuff, I can go, hey, this book said that. Is that true? You know, you have at least a little understanding that I'm helping you bring together, instead of the opposite way around where I'm helping you bring it together and now you're going to go read it. That's backwards. All right, high school teachers. Teachers check on your completed work. Teachers remind you of incomplete work. Teachers approach you if they believe you need assistance. Teachers provide you with information you missed when you were absent. That's a big one. Teachers present material to you, understand the material in the text, present material to help you understand the material in the textbook. Teachers often write information on the board, copied in your notes, right? Teachers impart knowledge and facts, sometimes drawing direct connections for you, leading you through the thinking processes. And teachers often take time to remind you of assignments and due dates. And then basically in college, that somewhat happens, it doesn't, right? Professors may not remind you of incomplete work. I probably won't. It's right there on Canvas. You haven't done it. I mean, it's right there. It shows you, and you haven't turned it in. So I'm assuming you don't want to turn it in, you know. I always, I check completed homework, but in some places they don't. You know, they may assign 17 different things and only count 7, that kind of thing. Professors are usually open and helpful, but most expect you, and we do respect you, to initiate contact if you need assistance. And that's part of growing up, right? That's part of, I'm going to assume that you've got it in your head. I'm going to assume that knowledge is there unless you say, hey, I need some help with this. And that's a big difference. See, so we don't ever teach kids in high school that they need to ask those questions. Instead, they get ridiculed if they ask questions. And in college, you get praised if you ask questions. And that's the truth. You ask a question, I'm like, you asked a question, I'm so excited. And so trying to shift over to that is important. Professors expect you to get from classmates any notes from classes you missed, right? So if you missed it, right, I'm going to have videos so you can just get it. But I expect you to figure out what you got to do, right? And not have to worry about that. Because that's, again, you go get a job, that's what you're expected to do. I'm sorry, I missed that meeting. Well, then you get with somebody and get what the meeting was about. Don't expect me to have a whole nother meeting for you. That's what's going to happen at work, right? And so the rest of this is basically just, the perpendicular to this. We basically, this whole situation on the college professor side is we're giving you more freedom to figure out what you need. And so you may automatically get things from professors or they may not. And you shouldn't assume that, well, in high school, they always made up for that and they always gave me what I needed. That's not going to necessarily happen for you. I expect you to approach me and say, I was gone. Is there something I got to do? So professors expect you to read, save, consult the course syllabus for an outline. That's what I have. And then that outline spells out exactly what's expected, when it's due, when it'll be graded, how it'll be graded. So in college is a learning environment in which you take responsibility for thinking through and applying what you've learned. And in high school, you're led through it. You're led through it. All right, now tests, I'm going to let you go through this because the tests are sometimes the same, sometimes different. Some instructors allow you to make up, others don't. The thing that you need to realize again is that well, we'll look at the guiding principle. Mastery is usually seen as the ability to reproduce what you were taught in the form in which it was presented to you, or solve the kinds of problems you were shown how to solve. Mastery in college is often seen as the ability to apply what you have learned to new situations or solve new kinds of problems. And so this part of testing here, it can be very similar to high school, or it may be very much different, where I gave you a bunch of information. Now I want you to apply that. Now, in my situation, where I'm teaching technology, the truth is that we're usually covering a bunch of facts, and then those facts need to be told back, right, through testing. 250 is that way, 151, almost everything is that way, because in technology, you're learning this core set of skills that you have to gain, as opposed to, thinking critically and saying, I think I'll do this instead. That's wrong, because the problem was with the network card and flashing your BIOS isn't going to help you with that, that kind of thing. So in this situation, it's very mixed. It's a mixed bag. All right, so then our grades. This is the last part. Your grades in high school effort counts, right? How many instructors did you have in high school? It's like, man, they were working so hard, so we're giving them a score for that, right? Courses are usually structured to reward a good faith effort. You're doing good. You may work hard enough to earn a C, but be awarded a B. So your school work that you turn in looks like that's C work. Man, I saw some growth in you, so I'm giving you a B. That's not college, let me tell you. Results count in college. Although really, good faith effort is important in regard to the professor's willingness to help you achieve good results, it will not substitute for results in the grading process. So in other words, I see you working hard. I see you trying to get it. That is important to me. That will affect how I approach you and what I'm seeing in your grades. But the honest truth is you haven't done the work, you don't get the grade. And so I see all that hard work you're doing, but I'm like, you got a C on your grades. I can't do anything more. And this is where this comes in, honestly. There are always bonus points in classes. And when you see somebody, I always give a little extra credit in 103. And when I see somebody do that extra credit, right, then that's like sweet. So when you got that 78% in my class, you now have a B. You did some extra credit that's going to enable you. And that to me is where that good faith effort comes in. So in this, you have an assignment to do with this. You really look through this yourself and find out, I never realized, but that is exactly what I thought in high school. And this is going to be different for me in college, right? Because the assignment that you're doing here, let's jump over here and this will end our video. Go. Is the reflection for that. So your educational success, oops, sorry, keep jumping around there. You're going to turn in your notes, but here's the differences between high school and college, and that's the one we looked at in the other video, where basically I want you to reflect on that. I want you to go through that and read it. Don't just take what I've said, but look at your notes, look at what's said there, and then honestly come up with, is this going to be an issue for me? And also, what did you find interesting about that? Was there anything that you read and you're like, that's so true, and I never thought of it? And so that is that for this particular lecture, and continue onward and up.